Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David, how you doing tonight?
Well, it was an exhilarating win for the Oilers. They came, they're the last three games they've been the cardiac kids, coming back each time rather unexpectedly. It's hard to come back in the NHL, and
Mm-hmm.
they did it. They came back in this game from 1-0, and then from 2-1, and then they won it 3-2 in the shootout. It was a pretty strong performance by the Edmonton Oilers. They had 21 grade A shots to 14 for the Nashville Predators. That's our tentative total at this point. And a big day for the franchise, Bruce. They take a risk both in terms of team chemistry and fan acceptance in signing and I think it's fair to say, definitely fair to say, controversial. A lot of people are called controversial, including
Yeah.
me now and then. But this guy is really controversial, Evander Kane. Um, what are your thoughts, Bruce? We'll get to the two good things, two bad things,
Yeah.
and two numbers. Let's just deal with this first. What do
Yeah.
you think? What do you think of it?
What happened first? Well, it's a major roll of the dice by the Oilers, and they're. I mean, the risk that they're taking here is on multiple levels, just given the past reputation of this player. Uh, uh, because he's going to make his presence felt on the ice, potentially in the room, potentially in the arena, potentially in the community. And on the ice, I think it's, as most people call it, a no-brainer that this is the sort of player that uh, will give the team a boost. He checks a lot of boxes that are fairly lightly checked by the existing roster in terms of his aggressiveness and general physicality. But the whole package for power forward, from shots, hits, penalties, fights. He's got a lot of skill. He's fast. He's big. Very, very, very flashy player. And from that aspect, for the price that they paid for him, which is no assets and a relatively small cap hit for the remainder of this season, it's hard to see how this doesn't make the Oilers a more dangerous team. Uh, these in the room, I mean, you and I are never probably going to know about it, but there's a lot of stories of this guy having um, uh, issues with teammates in the past, and I heard some stories today about an assistant coach who wanted to fight him, stuff like that. Like it just what's going on now. My suspicion is, and this applies to across the board for him, is that he will be on best behavior. I mean, this is a huge turning point, crossroads in his professional and personal life, quite frankly. And he's comes in here with one chance to make an impression, not just on this team, but on the hockey world, that he's still going to be a big time player and he can get his crap together and help the team. And his next contract, big or small, may well depend on how that performance is. Uh, and as for in the arena, I stated this in an article I wrote a couple of weeks ago, and I've been reading on and off from different people that I know and respect, who are sort of distancing themselves from the team based on the past history of the guy that they just signed. And I've talked to people who said they think they won't renew their season tickets and or if I'm just going to step back from the team for a while. There's plenty of it on Twitter today, and that's a huge risk that they're risking alienating. Even if it's 5 or 10% of the fan base. I mean, the polls that I saw were basically 2/3, 1/3. Well, 1/3 is a lot when it's sort of a core fundamental issue for some of them, and then finally the community is this that he's coming to live in our city for a while, and hopefully we won't have any repeats of some of the past stories. And they are stories, but there are a lot of them from a lot of different eyewitnesses and um, uh, people, that
A lot of lawsuits and a lot of investigations, Bruce.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
fair to say. And I think it's also fair to say, I don't know if this is fair to say, but is he like a gambling addict? Like he seems to have a fundamental addiction problem here that
Hmm.
he's got to address in his life. You know, because his
Hmm.
fight, like his aside from all the behavior stuff, his financial life is a shambles,
Hmm.
and he's gone into bankruptcy, and so this is he's had a very troubled life as a pro athlete.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and as for you know, if some fans are backing away because of this, I have nothing to say about that other than like it's ever like I would never try to argue against
Hmm.
someone doing that. Like people have got to assess this player on their own.
Right.
The way I look at it is I um I just see these as really serious charges. Some of the allegations are super serious, and you know, as I've said before, I've covered trials, major crimes for 20 years at one point in my career. It was my focus as a reporter. And a
Right.
couple times I saw police convinced someone was guilty as hell, and they were dead wrong. They were dead wrong. And they were absolutely and utterly convinced about these, you know, individuals, guilt of individuals. And I was too along the
Hmm.
way. And what that taught me, like I started to just think, okay, you got to just before you
Right.
start to assign guilt on really serious charges, you got to be careful. I have to be careful.
Hmm.
My job is to be fair and accurate and not to make judgments before I have all the information. So when there's serious charges like there is with Kane, I think it needs to be dealt with not in a like honestly, not in a Twitter free for all, but in a serious place in the courts. And some of these things with Kane are serious enough that they're ending up in the courts.
Hmm.
That's the proper venue for him to be judged. And when that happens, when there starts to be judgments, for instance, if there are judgments against him, then I'll put real weight in that. Until then, I've learned to be cautious because I can be wrong. And you know, the only judgment I have seen turned out in his favor, where he was
Yes.
awarded custody of his child, which is a really serious matter. It's not, this is never taken lightly. Now, maybe
Right.
it was a case of the best of a bad, two bad choices, and I don't know. Again, I'm just guessing. But he was given that. So I do put a little bit of weight in that. And just as a general principle, I'm not against giving people chances in life. Like I think it's important to do so. So I'm personally not going to back away from the team because of this. Although I have real questions about this
Hmm.
individual. I hope he can figure out his life
Yeah,
because
no
it
kidding.
doesn't seem like he's done a very good job up to date. Although he's done a good job in one aspect, he's a hell of a hockey player, and that's why the Edmonton Oilers signed him. In terms of the Oilers, Bruce, on the on ice stuff, now they don't have to like when they're looking. They're desperate for some toughness up front often, and they don't have to move up Cassian anymore. This Kane gives them the ability to have a highly skilled player that you know still at the top of his game that they can play with McDavid or Draisaitl. And when we're looking at the top lines, we you know you could there's going to be endless suggestions and permutations combinations you can go with. But you have nine players in Kane, McDavid, Yamamoto, Hyman, Draisaitl, Puljujarvi, Fogle, Nugent Hopkins, and I think Holloway event in a month or two. Nine players who can really play top nine hockey. Most of those guys can, you know, at least seven of those guys could play top two line hockey. So it's a very straightforward move if you're trying to win the Stanley Cup, which is what the Edmonton Oilers are doing. And this is a team that has given other people with checkered past second chances. And I know people resent it when people say that because they say, well, you know, other people were much more contrite than Kane is right now.
Right.
Although that's yet to be seen. Like I don't even know if we've heard from Kane.
There's a
Um,
long interview on TSN that I personally have not had a chance to watch yet. It's something like
me neither.
35 minutes long. And I'm going to try and track that down and watch the whole thing. I remember that came out with the Kyle Beach thing where, you know, it wasn't until you heard the full length interview from the guy that you got a,
Uh,
you know, a better sense of the situation. I'm not saying this is Kyle Beach. I'm just saying this is a
yeah,
guy that's
no,
got some
I
explaining to
just
do.
I'm
And
hesitant, honestly, of believing anything Kane says. Like
yeah,
I'm
well, I'm interested
I
to
ain't
hear
buying
how
it.
he frames it.
Yeah, fair enough, but I ain't
And
buying it. I won't like for someone
no.
like that with this record, it has to be hard, difficult action over a long period of
Right.
time that he's got to take. We'll see if he's on that path or not. So that's where I'm at. Any other thoughts, or do you want to move on to the?
Uh, well, just in terms of, I mean, with with the, I mean, the most serious thing to me is assault against women, and I know that a few number of the women that I follow and on Twitter and respect are quite taken aback, to put it mildly. And each of the charges is kind of a he said, she said, but when you have several of them, it's he said, they said. And when the stories are coming in, it really gives me great pause. He did win that custody battle with his ex-wife, who seems to have issues of her own, I think is the only takeaway we can have from what's come in from that.
And
That
they
sounds like
both,
they had an explosive relationship.
yeah, they both alleged physical violence within
Yeah,
the relationship, and
right.
um,
Right, but
yeah,
the one judgment that certainly did go against him was the bankruptcy, and it was $26 million. It wasn't like he got a little bit in the hole and couldn't pay off his credit cards. This was like a huge sum of
or
money that he
did he file for bankruptcy, or was
he
that
did
forced on him? Oh, he
he did
filed
he
for it.
did, and that was the
Yeah.
final judgment, was in the range of 25 million, 26 million, I think it was. And
Holy moly!
yeah, well, and I mean, and so uh, this is a guy that is going to be in our town. Um, and with well, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but there's a lot of things just sort of on the personal level of tabs not paid and stuff like that. Well, I want the restaurateurs and have their tabs paid and things like that. He needs to come in and set a great example, and there's a huge pressure on him to do so. And hopefully that will carry the day for this time in
Well,
Edmonton.
if he wanted to come to the city where there's going to be 500,000 people looking over his shoulder, he picked the
Mhm.
right one. He picked
Mm.
the right one. Yeah. All right.
So, from
See
a
how it
hockey
goes.
perspective, the Oilers have added left wingers Ryan Nugent-Hopkins on Tuesday, Zach Hyman on Thursday, and very possibly Evander Kane on Saturday, with Dylan Holloway warming up in the bullpen. And all of a sudden, a position that was kind of a weak link on this team, and certainly was during the time Hyman and Nugent-Hopkins were unavailable, is looking pretty deep. They could, all four guys that started the game uh, last Saturday that won the game against Calgary, they could be on the outside looking in before too long.
Yeah. And on the right side, Jesse Puljujärvi starting to play like a beast, if you ask me. All right. Two good things each, two bad
Hmm.
things, two numbers. What's your good thing, Bruce?
My good thing number one, I'm going to go with Nicole Koskinen. I thought he was very fine again tonight. He faced a lot of tough shots, and a lot of tough shots in difficult situations where a goal against would have put the Oilers in a bad spot. And I didn't think, the two goals that cleanly beat him were great shots by, top scorers from uh, from Nashville. It was I think it was Forsberg's 22nd and Duchesne's 21st of the season. I mean, it's two 20-goal scorers at the sort of halfway point of the season, and they sniped. And they sniped a few other times too, and he stopped those ones, and he stopped a few others. And I thought, especially after Nashville made it 2-1, and there was a few minutes there before Edmonton tied it up, kind of out of the blue, but where Nashville had a series of pretty dangerous chances, and if they make it 3-1, it's good night, Irene. And they never did get that third goal, just like Vancouver. They just got they got to two, and there they stopped. And Koskinen, in addition to the, I guess, 12 saves he made off of grade A shots in regulation time, was 3 for 3 in the shootout, with a couple of humdingers in there as well. And full credit to him, uh, named third star in the building as one of the key reasons Oilers came away with the 2 points again, 3 games in a row.
Yeah, it speaks to the caution that Ken Holland has to have in making a trade because he has to get someone who's better than Koskinen. And Koskinen is, I think it's fair to say he's streaky. I think
Very
I
fair.
think we can say that he's streaky. Man, the he made a couple saves with 5 minutes left in the third period, point blank saves off that Jeannot guy.
Tanner Jeannot.
Uh, yeah, geez. Puljujärvi got beat out of the kind of didn't stop the guy or out of the corner. So Lagesson goes in there, leaves Jeannot right in front of the net, and 2 point blank chances that are pounded off Koskinen's pads. And then he makes, with a minute 30 left in overtime, there's a breakaway, and he stones, I can't remember who it was, he stones that shooter. And then we saw the full 3 meters of the man spread out on the ice in the shootout to stop Duchesne's incredible chance.
Mm-hmm.
That was wonderful. And it is great to see Mikko Koskinen do well. I'm completely honest. I've soured on him a little. I've lost some trust in Koskinen's ability. He often looks awkward on the ice.
Yep.
But he can come up. He can come up big. I think he is a backup NHL goalie. I think that's fair to say. Like, he can. I don't know what his save percentage is now, but it's probably above 900
Over
again.
900 after tonight, because he was rocking about a 935, I think, tonight.
Yeah. So good for him.
933, I guess.
I'm going to go with my first good thing, Bruce, as puck luck. And it's something the Oilers really didn't get a whole heck of a lot of during their losing streak. They really didn't. No. They just couldn't. You know, they regularly had a few more, they averaged about one more grade A shot on game than the other team, but they just couldn't get any luck. They couldn't get one. And UC Saros, is it UC Saros or UC? He had a hell of a game. That's a hell of a goaltender. I really liked how he looked in net.
Terrific.
Man, good. We were talking about Tretiak the other night, and he looked like Tretiak to me, just so solid and square on the net, like a crab. Anyway, the Oilers were having trouble. They were getting all kinds of grade A shots this game and having trouble scoring. And then finally, Evan Bouchard launches one from the point. And I think it initially goes off someone's stick right away, starts bouncing. And then it goes off Johansson's skate in front of the net, and it goes in the net.
Yeah.
And it made it 2-2 with 5 minutes left in the second period, ties it up going into the third period. Just absolutely critical moment in the game, big goal. And what a beauty puck luck is. When she finally shows up, she is the most beautiful thing you're going to see. Other than a Conor McDavid rush or a Leon Draisaitl one-timer. Puck luck is so fine. So wonderful.
Well, we were saying not long ago, when was the last time the Oilers got a junky goal of any description?
Yeah.
And then McLeod got that one on the short side the other night. You know, the goalie made 20 great saves, but he let that one in. And then tonight they finally got the old double banker that goes in the net. It seems like we've seen 10 goals against like that. I mean, Toronto got 2 in one period like that, for God's sake, in the game in Toronto in early January, and they won that game by 1 goal essentially, and that was happening too often. So we'll take that bounce. You know, the tying goal, David. They don't come any bigger in Gary Bettman's NHL than the game tying goal, because they're worth on mathematical average 1.5 standing points, because you get 1 for the tie, and then you get a 50% chance at the third point in the overtime because you got the tie. And tonight they actually got the full 2 points. Without that goal, they lose 2-1. So, you know, that game tying goal has, statistically, any way you choose to measure it, it has more value than any other goal in a game.
Yeah, and maybe even more to the Oilers, at least the way they're playing in overtime right now, because they're stomping. So, yeah, Fortuna finally showed up. All right. What is your second good thing, Bruce?
I'm going to go with Darnell Nurse, and this was just general impressions. I thought this was the best he's looked in a game for a long time. Like, he really bossed it, and he started. The longer the game went on, the more and more he took over, and he was just easily winning one-on-one battles against Nashville forwards and erasing them from the play, or easily winning races to the puck and making good decisions with it to get it out of harm's way. And he, he skated so well in this game, and he played 28 minutes and 47 seconds. And he had the Oilers outshot in his 22 minutes at evens. The Oilers outshot Nashville 19-12. And Nurse himself had 9 shot attempts, 5 hits, 2 block shots, a takeaway, a giveaway. He was all over the score sheet. And the only bad thing was the chintzy penalty he got when he was on the receiving end of a dirty hit, and he got up and he kind of gave the guy a light tap in the skate, and somehow the ref who'd missed the initial hit was all, well, I got to call that retaliatory slash. I can't even call it a slash. It was a slash. Anyway, it was. I was a little annoyed at that moment because they'd already nailed Puljujärvi for a legit tripping penalty, but about 5 seconds after Puljujärvi himself had legit been tripped, and starting to think this is going to be one of those games. And
Sure felt like
anyway,
that.
Nurse rebounded from that, and his teammates killed the penalty. And if I had a third good thing, it would be the penalty kill that killed 3 for 3 without a shot, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny. Nurse, I'm going to make a perhaps odd comparison for Nurse and Bouchard when they're together because they don't physically look like these two players, but stylistically, I'm a big European soccer fan, and they remind me of Andre Pirlo and Gennaro Gattuso, the great AC Milan combination in midfield. With Gattuso, the kind of the cop who would regularly boss the game with his physicality and his dynamic play, and Pirlo, this incredible mad bomber with passes. And that's how I see Nurse and Bouchard. They're much lankier physically, but that's in terms of style. I see Bouchard as the Pirlo and Nurse as the Gattuso, and hopefully able to that was the word with Gattuso, how he bossed the game again and again and again. And Nurse did that tonight. He certainly did it in overtime, and he's capable of doing that. He's capable of doing it for the next 5, 6, 7 years in Edmonton. In the prime of his career coming up here. So the Oilers could be, we still don't know with Bouchard which way he's going to go. Like the confidence of young players, the development of young players is uncertain, fragile. But that's the upper end of what I'm hoping for, is that kind of just solid combination play from those two players together. And, it's Bouchard's been there the last couple games, and it has not worked out well for the right side demon playing with Nurse because it's a tough job playing all those hard minutes. He did a little better tonight. He's certainly getting his mojo back, really moving the puck. He's looking really good with the puck on his stick. I like him on the power play. Bruce,
he made one nice rush tonight where he came back and he picked off a pass and he just went right up the middle through about 4 guys and fired a nice shot that tested Saros. And he, like Nurse, had crooked numbers right across the event summary, every column except faceoffs, which don't apply to defensemen. They each had a scoring point. They each had a penalty. They're just all over the score sheet, and that's a pretty dynamic pairing when they're on their game.
My second good thing was Conor McDavid. He was just flying tonight. And in terms of our assessment of his play at least on grade A shots, which is kind of a pretty big event in a game, it's a grade A shot. He was in on 12 of them. He didn't make a mistake on any, Bruce. Wow. We didn't have him on any. No mistakes. 12, so plus 12 on grade A shots. That's a 9. I don't know what Kurt's going to give, but he just was fantastic in this game. And who do they have him with? Yamo and Nuge again? Is that it?
Yeah.
He's with some skilled players here. And he's going to be with some skilled players all year long, and they don't have to be Leon Draisaitl anymore. So it's exciting. This is exciting again. 3-game winning streak, and McDavid with his, getting his A game back after not having it for a while there. So possibly related to being sick. So.
Well, he made a brilliant rush to tie the game in the last minute of the first period, and Nugent Hopkins and Nurse made the play in front of Oilers' net, and McDavid had to reach back to grab the puck and drop it in his own path, and then away he went against poor Matt Benning one-on-one. And I thought Benning did an all right job of driving him outside, but McDavid was somehow able to force that shot through Saros. And lest we forget the shootout, where one goal was scored, and McDavid absolutely completely bamboozled UC Saros. My goodness, he's just standing over there tapping the puck into the net, with the goalie over there in the corner. I'm just going to tap it home,
Oh man. Wouldn't you like to make a play like that
Oh,
once in your
just
life,
once.
Bruce? Go down the ice and stick handle like that. Like
Oh,
what lightning hands. In the overtime, he had
mhm,
three rushes that just sliced open the other team and led to, great scoring opportunities. Two of them ended up in shots, and we think one of them Hyman didn't get his stick on. But
right,
they as the cliche goes, they had no answer for Conor McDavid in overtime. They really didn't. He's
right.
just too fast, too good, too tough
Mhm.
for those wingtip bozos, as they once said on Crime Story.
He looked a little shaken up. He took a shot off the
Yeah.
foot, and I'll be happier when I hear that tomorrow he's out on the ice for practice and everything's normal. Because you never know what happens when a guy takes a skate off. But
Yeah.
hopefully that's just me being over sensitive that something might have happened there. But he was limping a little bit and for a little bit of game time, but he certainly didn't appear to have slowed down all that much. So
What's your bad thing, Bruce?
yeah, I'm going to go with this weird play where actually nothing happened, but it's more what could have happened and when it happened and how it never should have happened when it happened. This is a play with 2 minutes left in the third period, and just as Jack Michaels is saying, and down the stretch they come. It's uh, the Oilers line is out there, and they've actually got pretty good possession in Nashville territory. It's Draisaitl with Fogel and Puljujarvi, and Keith and Ceci are on the blue line. And at the end of this of the cycle, which was a fairly long one, Keith shot one into traffic that didn't get through the traffic in front of the net. And as Nashville sort of recovered the play, and a couple of their players went to the bench for a line change, and all three Oilers forwards kind of drooped their shoulders and started coasting to the Edmonton bench. And now we've got Cece and Keith and three forwards that aren't even looking at the puck because they're all each fall. Like the third guy, which was Fogel, had to be sort of watching his line mates saying, I better stay out here and guard the right side and make my change when I can. So now Keith and Cece come over to guard the right side because the forwards are all changing on the left side. And the Nashville defenseman looks up and he fires about 100-foot pass that hits Matt Duchene right on the tape, right on the Edmonton blue line, 20 feet behind the Oilers defensemen who are at the center red line. 2 minutes left, tie game in regulation time. And the puck hits Duchene's stick and it hops off his stick and it skitters ahead of him and he can't control it and make a play. But if the puck hits his stick, he's got a clear-cut breakaway with 2-2 tie, 2 minutes left in regulation, where a goal is a killer. And it takes away your stand. Like you got to be cautious. You got to be paying attention, and your coach has got to be all over that and calling it out because a successful team just doesn't pull off crap like that. It's like I say, nothing came of it. But I ran the replay a few times, and I mean, Duchene, he had the puck on his stick, and Keith was still in the circle, and Duchene was on the blue line with the puck over the blue line and 20 feet behind me. Kane, nobody would have caught Duchene on that play, and you got to be keeping track. And the forwards weren't, and the defensemen weren't. And it was nearly a 5-man blunder that, would have had us. It would have been well, I guess it still is our first bad thing, but we would have been talking about a lot earlier in the podcast. So,
Yeah, I've got Keith was in on that one. I've got Duncan Keith as my bad thing, two particular plays in the second period. And I know they say that the legs go as you get older. Well, but the mind shouldn't. Like the head should be there in the game. And these are two mental mistakes. And again, like one of my favorite sayings now is hockey happens fast, because when you're
mhm.
playing it, it really does. And
Yep,
bad things happen so fast.
yep,
So you got to be really reading the game well and on top of it. And on the first play, it's Nashville's, I think it's their second goal of the game. And yeah, their second goal of the game. Matt Duchene just sneaks in behind him and gets the pass, goes in, cuts in the middle, and snipes in an incredible. It's a 2-on-1, and he snipes in a shot. And Duncan Keith's got to be thinking, how did I let that happen?
Mm-hmm.
How did that happen? Like, he's a veteran defenseman. He's played more than 1,000 NHL games in a top pairing role. How
Mm-hmm.
does he let someone just sneak in so cleanly behind him? It will happen now and then, but it's happened a lot. And so that's one thing. And then literally 45 seconds later, after that goal is scored, he's still out there,
Yeah.
and he tries to again he makes he tries to keep the puck in the Chicago end, maybe trying to make up for his earlier mistake, and it leads to a 3-on-1 this
Mm-hmm.
time. And just an absolutely massive, huge save by Mikko Koskinen, which would have been a killer.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
I don't know, he's just take care of defense first. Like, I know they want him to
Mm-hmm.
be an offensive hockey player. His offense comes when he gets the puck on his stick in his D zone, gets his head up and makes a great pass. Duncan Keith is still a really fine hockey player in that moment.
Yep. He does
But
lots
there
of
has
things right.
been too many defensive mistakes, and these were two mental ones, two mental
Mm-hmm.
errors. And he wasn't terrible. He didn't have a bad game. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
I give him if I grade him. Like,
Right.
he made some good plays, but those two plays, it's like, you're the
Yeah.
veteran. You're the savvy veteran. Okay, be the savvy veteran. Savvy,
Savvy.
savvy veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, be the savvy veteran, and don't give up odd man rushes because of
Yeah.
mental mistakes.
Well, the Oilers had 7 official giveaways in this game, and 3 of them were charged to Duncan Keith.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just guys were getting behind him, which happened those 2 plays that you described and the one play I described, but 3 other times where he had the puck and coughed it up. Now, one of them, a guy made a good play to knock a pass out of the air, turn it around. But anyway, it was not his finest hour. I don't think he stunk, but there were issues.
Your number.
Yeah, I'm going to go with number 4. This is number of shots on net that the Oilers' leading shooter had tonight. And the Oilers' leading shooter was Duncan Keith, 4 shots, Zach Hyman, 4 shots, Darnell Nurse, 4 shots, Leon Draisaitl, 4 shots, Warren Fogle, 4 shots, Zach Cassian, 4 shots. That doesn't happen too often. Evan Bouchard, 4 shots, and Conor McDavid, 4 shots. 8 different Oilers, 4
Wow.
shots each, and 2 more with 3 with Cody Ceci and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They were peppering pucks, but it was a real team effort. It was, like last game, it was like Leon had 11, and we had some kind of outrageous crooked numbers. Well, tonight it was sort of coming from across the lineup of guys getting their chances and taking them and getting pucks on net. And so it was a more of a balanced attack in this game.
That's pretty remarkable. Yeah. I don't think you see that very often.
No.
Okay, my number, Bruce, is 1.55. And that's Leon Draisaitl's goal points per game. Points per games played. So he's
Mm-hmm.
now, I think this is up. How many games have they played? Was that 39?
This is 39. Yep. And
Oh, this isn't an updated. It's going to be down a little
he's
bit
stuck
from
on
that.
59 points, so he'd be
Yeah. It's
1.52 or something.
yeah,
So
it's going to
just
be
over
down.
1.5.
Anyway, he and McDavid's at 1.54 heading into the game. He was at 1.55.
Mm.
And they lead the league in
Mm-hmm.
points per game. And let me just see here. I think Leon's the leader, and he's tied with Huberdeau. I don't know why they have him. Like, they have Huberdeau in number 1, but Leon's played 5 less games. So these guys are, I think they had a higher points per game. Yeah, they had a higher points per game last season. They've been really cool, relatively cool during the Oilers' poor streak, honestly. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's how long it lasted.
Leon was exactly 1.5. He had 84 points in 56 games, so he's right there.
And Connor was it
He was
1.8?
way higher. Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one
Yeah, it was way higher.
1.8.
Yeah. So let's hope they start their assault again on the Art Ross Trophy standings. They're both right at the top of the league in terms of points per game. So they are the 2 top scorers in the NHL. And I think we're going to see some good things, Bruce. I think Brian Lawton was on the radio talking about the need to trade. He thought for Marc-Andre Fleury, but really what came through was his confidence in this team. He really thinks this team is a good team and is ready to get going again. And it wasn't as bad as it looked. And I really agreed with that assessment. And according to our grade A shots, that's accurate. What he was saying, that when they were losing as much as they weren't as bad as that looked. It was for a number of factors. And could have won a few more points at least during that spree with better puck luck, some better goaltending, things like that. He does think they have a hole in net. I think I agree with that. I won't speak for you, but he's very bullish on the team. That's what came through to me, and mainly because of McDavid and Draisaitl. He's right to be bullish, and they finally have truly. There can be no one who can say they haven't finally, at least in the top six, surrounded McDavid and Draisaitl with some excellent wingers.
Mm-hmm.
With Kane arriving, with Nuge, with Hyman, with Puljujarvi, with Yamamoto, there's a lot of options. With even Fogle, there's a lot of options up there, and they don't have to play together. They can play with other players, and they should be able to get stuff done at even strength, and they can work together on the power play. So I'm looking forward to this next run of games. Of course, I'm riding the high of a 3-game winning streak. I will admit that, but and 3 rather remarkable wins. Nonetheless, Bruce, these really are 2 spectacular players. There is no choice but to be all in right now. When you have these 2 players at this point in their career, you do make a trade for a goalie. You do make a trade and you bring in a left defenseman, maybe even to play second pairing if Keith doesn't get his act together better. So like you go for it here, and the addition of Kane is a step in that direction on the ice. So
I'm interested to see if they're going to use Kane in the net front position in the power play, if that just means to pull Yarby and Hyman, who have both been good in their role, just get sort of bumped aside, or how that works out. And I'm also interested to see how they'll do the lines. Will Nugent Hopkins default to 3C if, because looking at the lines that we saw tonight, it's not too hard to see Kane moving into the line with McDavid. I guess he could move into Fogel's spot with Draisaitl.
and Puljujarvi, you could have Hyman. Hyman really looked great. Like finally, they had a third line, mainly because of Zach Hyman. I thought like he really drove that line, and they got much better performance out of it with McLeod and Cassian. So maybe that's something that we're going to see. I think we're going to see lots of different. Listen, what we see, Bruce, we see this, all kinds of different line combinations. Like he now and then will stick with one line combination for months on end. But generally, we see the blender, and I bet you we see the blender for quite a while. And I really hope if Kane has got to come in and earn that power play time. Personally, he's got to earn it at even strength. I don't want to see him on the first game on the power play. I don't think I'd be surprised if we did. Puljujarvi has been fantastic there, and Hyman has been very good. So, that said, if they finally move Puljujarvi to the penalty kill and get some extra ice time for him there, that would work for me too. So, I don't think Kane's a penalty killer, is he?
He is.
Is he?
Yeah, he does everything. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I've heard people talking about it, and I'm sure I remember him. I mean, I'm not sure if he's a top unit guy, but he's out there and he can be a threat because he's fast and skilled. So
I don't really I've seen him play all these years. I don't have a strong a huge impression of him as a player. Like honestly, other than the odd play. Like some players really stand out for their hustle and their skill, but I don't have I'll be interested to watch his game more closely and see what he brings and doesn't bring, and see how solid he is as a defender.
He has 14 career shorthanded goals.
Okay, that's pretty good.
He scored at least one shorthanded goal in 9 of the last 10 seasons, which tells me, just that's the stat that's available to me. But if you looked up ice time, you don't score shorthanded goals unless you're out there a little bit.
For sure.
So he's he's a threat shorthanded, and he's an alternative, an option that they can add to the cycle, to the mix. So, and they're going to need penalty killers because some of these fourth line grinders, as the roster continues to flush out and guys get healthy, there's going to be people falling off the end of that roster.
There will, for instance, and I think you can have like I think you can have Derek Ryan on your team, or you can have Colton Sevier on your team, but I don't think a good team has both. Like
Every night? Probably
every
not.
night. No, I think they have one guy like that, and I'm fine with it if it's either of those guys because they're both good players in that role.
Mm.
But yeah, we're going to see a drop off for a lot of players who have been getting ice time. They're not going to get much, and they're not going to get games. The battle all up and down the roster for ice time just gets really intense now with Evander Kane arriving.
Ideally, they balance it out a little bit. I mean, tonight's all too typical. Nurse 29 minutes, Draisaitl 27.5 minutes, McDavid 26 minutes, night after night after night. That takes a toll. And if you could cut even a couple of minutes off, especially those forwards, and you still obviously lean on them very heavily, but 23 minutes as opposed to 26 or 28. And if you've got good depth and all the way down at least through nine, your top nine, then you can afford to do that a little bit. So
I don't have a strong feeling about it, honestly. Like I know that there's a whole science evolving around this about optimum ice time and recovery time and what players can do over a period of time. And perhaps I'm a little old school, having watched Gretzky play whatever he and Messier
I
play
wish they kept
tons.
ice time in those days. I
Yeah.
sure would love to know that stat
So
for
I'm probably
those guys.
stuck in the past, and I don't put as much weight on this as probably people
That's
should. Like, the modern world would put more, they would look at this really closely, look at it scientifically, and say, to get peak performance out of him, he should not be playing, this smaller amount of ice time that he's playing now. That's probably the case, but I guess I'm sanguine about it because of, having seen that where players just played and played and played. I Although watching McDavid and Draisaitl, especially in overtime, I'm often thinking like, get the hell off the ice already
yeah. Well,
before you gas out and they score a goal against you, because we've seen that too much.
I've not seen the player yet that had sort of VO2 of Wayne Gretzky. Like he could
No,
play all night. That was unreal. His
and he
recovery.
hustled.
Yeah. I mean, in Peter Zosky's book, they talk about him in the training camp just sort of breaking the machine that measured the VO2 recovery, where they just couldn't believe that he had his breath back within 10 seconds of pausing to catch it. It was like off the charts.
I was thinking McDavid tonight was pretty incredible in overtime, the way he could keep going and going and going and going fast.
Hmm.
I really notice it with Leon when Leon's out there for more than a minute. He really slows down. And but with McDavid this time, at least in overtime, he just seemed to have his legs all night long and could just keep flying. So
Both those guys are playing better. We're just, I think, days away from returning to what we're accustomed to, which is games where both guys have 2, 3 points, sort of as a routine. Lately, it's been 1 point or zero for both guys most games. And the odd, Leon had that 1 4 point game. There was the Calgary game where they each got assists on the two Bouchard goals on the power play. But there was uh, there they're starting to do the process and they're not getting really rewarded for it yet, but it's going to come.
well,
Those guys are going to score.
in the last two games, Bruce,
Hmm?
um, Draisaitl's been on like 21 grade A shots, and McDavid's been in on 14
26.
and 12, 26. So normally that would bring you 6, 7 points, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And what did he have? Did he get 2 points?
2 points.
Yeah. So
A goal in each game.
he's getting his chances, as they say,
Yeah.
and the pucks will go in. And he got one tonight. Bruce, let's leave it there. I guess we'll be talking on Saturday night.
Yeah, I don't know if Kane will be in the lineup, and my position is I'm withholding judgment, and I'm going to just try and judge him on what he does on the ice in terms of how we cover it. But it'll be an interesting uh, interesting experiment that the team's undertaken here, and it's very high in the risk-reward front.
Indeed. All right. Let's leave it there. Thanks for talking tonight, Bruce.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.